Right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to this roundtable as part of WTIN's Innovate Textile and Apparel Virtual Trade Show. My name's Jessica Owen, and I'm the Deputy Digital Editor for Technical Textiles at WTIN. And today I will be moderating this session, which is on improving health and wellbeing through smart textiles. I think you'll agree that this is probably a very important topic at the moment, considering recent events such as COVID-19, and obviously that has meant a lot of things, but it's also meant that many people have had to turn to remote healthcare solutions. So we're going to discuss sort of the opportunities there and what that means for smart textiles, among sort of other things as well. But before we begin, I should introduce you to our two guests today. So first of all, we have Milad Alizadeh. We've just gone over this before the recording, and I did have it right. But Milad, anyway, do you want to give us a wave so that people know who you are?
Thank you so much.
So you are the Vice President of R&D at Myant, and Myant is a leader in textile computing based in Canada, for those of you who don't know. And recently the company has been working on its smart textile monitoring system called SKIN, which is SKIN, to help fight against COVID-19, and so it'll be quite interesting to hear more about that. And then next up we have Terence Keeley, who is an industrial design consultant at Design Partners in Ireland. So welcome, Terence. So you are the product design and innovation, well, the company is a product design and innovation agency, and it sort of partners with some of the world's most innovative brands, including sort of those from the smart textiles field. And I think you create sort of future product experiences, and among that is sort of applications in medical devices. So yes, that is our two guests today. So welcome. Hope you're doing well and you're ready for ready for our roundtable discussion. So hopefully it should be quite good. So then, let's start with you, Milad. I mentioned COVID-19 just there, and it appears that there's sort of never been a better time to invest in remote healthcare solutions. So do you mind just sort of explaining how Myant's SKIN system can help to detect and monitor the symptoms of COVID-19 and other conditions as well, actually?
Sure. Thank you, Jessica and WTIN for the invitation. So before COVID became such a pandemic and captured everyone's lives and kind of threw it off the grid, we were developing smart textiles, factors, underwears, bras, tank tops for monitoring of cardiac health, as it's one of the #1 killers in the world. When COVID hit, we had this foundations of the system going, and we were preparing it for clinical trials and validation of the system. That we were like, well, we can capture metrics continuously using the same system that could be relevant to COVID. Those metrics that we capture, we monitor the full PQRST complex of an individual's ECG, so you can monitor not only changes in heart rhythm variability and the R peak detection, but also any change in pathology of the ECG. That could be potentially an indicator of the onset of COVID, or one of the factors that could be affected by being kind of exposed to the COVID virus. Second was we could capture an individual's breathing rate and breathing, and this would be very important because it's a respiratory illness, and individuals would have coughs or shortness of breath or changing in their respiratory pattern, so we could capture that. We could also monitor an individual's temperature. Many of the individuals that have COVID demonstrate fever. You see some are asymptomatic and don't show any changes, but for the ones that have symptoms, we can start monitoring their temperature as well and see how it exasperates over time. And also we can capture the individual's movement, meaning that we could find out, hey, is this person just running, and doing exercise, and is that what their heart has gone up and why they're very heavily, and or is it the person lying down in a sedentary position and these things are happening? So that was kind of our transition towards helping with remote monitoring. Obviously, the foundations of the system weren't available when kind of the first wave hit, per se, but we've been working feverishly with the government in Canada and Ontario in preparing our system and moving it to distributed, basically exposure for hospitals and geriatric care and remote care, which is a very big areas where in the hospital we can monitor individuals in old care homes and geriatric care. We can have foundations where many of the nurses or caretakers that would be transmitting the virus between patients' rooms or individuals' rooms, we could eliminate that by having remote monitoring of them, as well as remote areas. It's a little bit different, I suppose, in areas in Europe, but in Canada, in Northern Ontario, the ratio, the density of a doctor to an individual is in the hundreds of kilometers in some cases. Don't quote me on that, but it's very big. And having the ability to monitor these people remotely is important and critical. So this system can bring that about. And following that, after we kind of validate within a closed environment within the healthcare system, individuals, we're going to be launching it to the general public. And this will be critical where we could see hot pockets and kind of areas of epidemic within the greater geographical distribution. And that could be a notification, that can be an early response, and people will know to, if we can start notifying them based on the algorithms that we will be able to decipher someone, hey, you seem to show the symptoms way in advance of them even feeling it or going somewhere, they can start taking measures in place. So that's kind of been the pivot for us. And we look forward to kind of expanding the possibility and helping and take the burden off the healthcare system a bit.
No, it sounds very interesting. I think I actually spoke to you a few months ago at the very beginning of this to sort of find out a bit more. So it's interesting to hear how it's sort of developing and what you're hoping to do with it down the line. So Terence, I'll come to you next actually. Can you talk us through some of the work that Design Partners has undertaken in the smart medical textiles field, and just sort of explain why these systems are also important for the future of healthcare?
Yeah, sure thing. So as you mentioned already, my background is in industrial design, and I've, specialized over the last 10 years. So moved on, done some additional training to focus on healthcare and focus my efforts on products and services within that space. So more recently, over the last 4 years, as the focus on remote healthcare and wearables, has come into more in focus. I've found myself heavily invested in this space, really, and work with some super clever companies and people, and more importantly, people. Sorry, I should have said. But here in DP, in the diagnostic space alone, I've been involved in a huge variety of work, ranging from everything between fixed hard plastic products right away to super intelligent devices, specifically in the area of ACL injuries or heart failure or Alzheimer's, ECG monitoring, all that sort of stuff. And just like the guys at Myland, we've well, I guess it's a few months old now, but we have been working on a smart ECG vest, which is one of the few projects that you can actually speak about publicly, obviously being involved in healthcare. But what we've seen in the existing world of measurement, is a huge amount of limitations present and solutions that ultimately don't work with users at all. So right now, anybody with some form of irregular heartbeat or behavior gets the joy of bringing home a halter for 48 hours to wear, which is essentially a big piece of plastic that hang around their neck with lots of free hanging leads and stick trodes, and it's just an entire mess. So the ambition here, or from their point of view, is to monitor an event in context, but the context in which the event may have happened is completely unrepeatable when you put this amount of product and cables and things like that onto somebody. The possibility of coming across that event again is really challenging. So our ambition really with this project is to remove these constraints, to allow someone to monitor while retaining, their everyday behavior, which should give the best chance of observing some form of irregularity. So we're essentially working on a smart undergarment, which is put on and forgotten about, same touch and feel as premium undergarments, as discreet as existing undergarments in terms of color, integration. It doesn't look like a high performance product because that's not what an undergarment should look like or feel like. It should feel like you invested in some really beautiful soft material and it's super discreet. And if you choose to wear a white t-shirt over it, you should be able to do that. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at what people already do, what they already enjoy, and building from that starting point. We're not looking at the tech first and saying this has to go here because it's always gone there and there's no other way. So our ambition here at Design Partners is really to elevate human potential. So what we're saying here is the user goes first, the user goes center, and everything else needs to be built around that and truly amplify the solution and the experience.
Okay. And I mean, you both there are sort of, well, both of your companies are looking at physical health. I mean, this roundtable is also sort of looking at well-being as well. So, have either of you and your companies ever looked into maybe what smart textiles could do for your mental health, for example? Has that ever been sort of on the cards at all? I mean, can smart textiles play a part there? I mean, me.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, like, well, you might as well go first, Terence, and then we'll see what Milad, if he has any thoughts on it.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So, the real opportunity here again is understanding symptoms in real time, in context where the user can really engage with their emotions without the influence of, unfamiliar people or locations or environments, anything like that. So we're currently working with a client in the area of Alzheimer's research, looking to understand how that changes over time. And it's amazing to see how people, willfully and selflessly, engage with this research, knowing that ultimately they may not be able to take advantage of the benefits of this research themselves, but what they're doing will help somebody down the line, because obviously Alzheimer's and dementia, this sort of stuff is not going away anytime soon. So I guess the challenge in some of these kind of projects really is you're looking to take a gold standard, for a certain type of an assessment and bring it into the home environment, which is really challenging. You're talking about, in terms of usability, we've a demand for a hugely repeatable accuracy of placement of all these different sensors on the head, shall we say. You need to be able to do that consistently, repeatably, and allow for people in the home environment to be robust and treated in a way that you wouldn't think of, and we need to be able to stand over that, because researchers need to be able to defend the data that's ultimately going to come from this system. And, people who are going to wear this in the home, they don't want to look like they've got a scientific experiment on their head, something, it needs to look like something that belongs in the home. People are willing to engage with you, so you need to help them remain engaged and, do that by not making them the focal point of the home, This thing should live within their home, within their world.
Okay, very cool. Milad, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think many of us did kind of quarantine during this period, and we experienced the difficulties of psychological difficulties, and in some cases, obviously, mental health scenarios for people already struggling with it. COVID definitely exacerbated the situation. The way we are looking at that, it's not the primary objective, but it is kind of a secondary objective that we're looking at aiming for. And what I mean by secondary is right now we're trying to capture the symptoms, but one of the byproducts that can come out of this, due to the fact that you can monitor individuals continuously, is creating that sense of connection. That is kind of the foundation that Mind was built on, was being able to create a connection with individuals, with your loved ones remotely. And there are many stories that I've heard of friends of mine where their grandparents were basically, or loved ones were alone by themselves, and they passed away alone, and no one could be with them, which is, it really puts things in perspective. So the way we see it is with the underwear, you can monitor and track your loved ones remotely and have an understanding of what's going on with them. And it kind of gives you a little bit of that sense of piece of thought as well. On the other side, they don't feel as disconnected. They know that you're looking at them, you're watching them, and that level of it creates a digital sense of connection. It's not as real as human to human, but it at least bridges the gap a bit. And beyond that, obviously, areas of research that we are working with and expanding the possibilities that can be realized with our form factors. We're looking at autism research and detecting anxiety in individuals, individuals with dementia or Alzheimer's. In the case of dementia, being able to express and understand what's going on with the emotions if they are not capable of expressing it. Individuals with Alzheimer's tracking, there are indications that could potentially exacerbate Alzheimer's, and the correlations of Alzheimer's with sleep apnea and diabetes, even though it's not strong, but being able to see those and make those connections and kind of have a holistic understanding of the individual. Your psychology is not separate from your physiology and your well-being, and they go hand in hand together. A healthy mind is in a healthy body and vice versa. So
Mm.
we think if we can empower the individual and as well, and as important, the individuals around them that will be supporting them as part of their community, um, that could, at least not fix the issue, but help lessen the blow, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I just want to touch on some of the main challenges that are sort of relating to smart textiles for health and well-being. One being consumer adoption. As smart textiles is still quite an emerging and sort of niche field. I mean, Terence, if I come to you first, I mean, how can we ensure that smart textiles are part of our everyday lives and they're not just seen as a gimmick? I mean, will it require further support from healthcare providers or governments or so on, for instance?
Well, I guess, it needs to be meaningful. The solution needs to be meaningful. And for the solution to be meaningful, you really need to consider the context. You need to get out there and do your ethnographic research. You need to understand the world in which you're looking to introduce a new product or service. What does it mean to live with a certain condition? What are the limitations? And really get a feel for where you can plug your product or service into that person's life. Where can we build on a habit, for example? Where can we elevate the user's ambition to be in control of their own healthcare? The majority of people want to help themselves, but proactively managing your health isn't without an investment of time and energy.
Mm.
So what we need to do is understand where we can equip people to get these wins and feel positive about the role that they are playing as being part of their own, therapeutic alliance. So if you think about where, engagement is big where the effort is little, which is, the consumer tech world, where the rewards far outweigh, the investments people put in. So, what this is saying to us is that your product or service, the UX needs to be on a par with what's been seen in the consumer tech world. That's where the bar is, really. It's not good enough to just take something from a clinical environment and move it into the home environment. That's just not a runner. So all the accuracy in the world in terms of what the tech is capable of doesn't really matter unless you can find a really good balance between the two fundamentals of, usability and tech capability.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true point there. And Milad, what about you? I mean, what does Mind do with its products that sort of makes people take them seriously, and it's not just like a one-off product, maybe like I don't know, a Fitbit or something that someone might just use for a little while?
Yeah. Um, to kind of add to that point, it's about the purpose. It's about the usability. It's about showing that this thing has value, and it's not a gimmick. And I guess the poignancy of what we are offering, considering the pandemic, kind of hits very close to home. That yes, I can monitor myself and my loved ones safely, and not have to worry about going to a hospital. That kind of message and that kind of possibility within the price of a Fitbit, will put a lot of people at ease, and will kind of be the adoption itself. When if something is good, and if something is purposeful, it's going to sell itself. It's like, a good smelling perfume. You're not going to have to sell the perfume. It's the smell of it is going to attract everyone. This is kind of there's no smell to it, but the concept, the purpose behind what you're developing has to have that, and people will come to it. And in this day and age, being able to know that you can monitor your parents, grandparents, the people you're most worried about, at a cost of an Apple Watch or a Fitbit, will in some senses adopt itself, and that will pick up. The way we're looking at it is, we're not tailoring this to an athlete that wants to run and increase or decrease their heart rate variability or respiration rate, from, let's say, whatever they are to a lower number. That definitely can be done, but that's not the major target population that we're going for again. Who is this for? Is anyone that has a heart and has, a running system that can be monitored. So it definitely works for them. But where we want to focus is people in, and that in itself, when a mother or a father buys this for their parents and for their children to monitor them, that will in itself start distributing this. And beyond that kind of emotional family connection that it has, for governments, for healthcare systems, this is a sensible solution. You know, you do not want people that feel slightly sick, they're sure, they're not sure, or even they're asymptomatic in some cases, to travel, go on public transit, get in a car, go on an Uber, however they get to the hospital, sit in the room, and actually contaminate other people. You know, it's a game of reducing those contact points when time is needed, and if someone is a worry, and they could potentially be monitored at home, let it happen there. So that's where we see the adoption picking up naturally and organically, rather than us trying to push and sell it. Hey, look at this new feature and look at that new feature. Well, there's only so much you can do with an HRV number, and I think that in itself has proven over time that it doesn't solve a problem. There's a lot of research and publications coming out and trying to stick that, hey, we can detect COVID from an HRV, from a Fitbit, you know, or an Apple Watch. And not to put that down, it's really great efforts, but the scope is limited. There needs to be a much more holistic and overarching kind of coverage of an individual for that to be a meaningful purchase and adoption by, you know, the general public.
Well, I mean, I guess you too, in what you're doing is actually, like you say, because you're monitoring health and you're trying to look after people and you're trying to keep families connected, you don't have to sell your products as well, because people will be interested in it. I imagine different areas of smart textiles. I mean, I can't think of any at the top of my head, but I imagine there's a shirt that can, I don't know, you press it and it plays a song. That is going to be a bit gimmicky because it's not really benefiting your life. So I guess you two have sort of got that edge there, and so hopefully that your products will be able to come to fruition and people will adopt them for the long term. So anyway, moving on. Yesterday we held a roundtable on the importance of choosing the right team when it comes to smart textiles. Due to the sort of interdisciplinary sort of nature of this industry and the variety of skill sets that are usually required, I mean, based on this, as well as practical considerations relating to electronics and manufacturing, etc., I mean, how do you believe that smart textiles can be enhanced further to provide more accurate and effective healthcare? Terence, do you mind if I just sort of ask you first?
So, sorry, could you repeat your question, please, Jessica?
So how do you believe that smart textiles can be enhanced further to provide more accurate and effective healthcare?
Okay, sorry, I misheard. Well, I think there's lots of room for growth. You know, we're in a bit of an early day stage with smart textiles at the moment, which is an amazing place to be because there's so many converging points of view and converging technologies. So it's an amazing time. But I think we are quite early doors. You know, we're still talking about hard components. We're still talking about hard PCBs to some extent. We're still looking at that evolving world of, you know, okay, an insulated wire is super robust and strong and you can stand over it, but you know, who wants a wire running around their smart garment? And then you're at the other end of it where you've printed traces which have so much potential and opportunity, but people don't have confidence in. So there's lots happening there. But I suppose one area would be, you know, the selection of fabrics available to you. You know, that can be quite limited because of the different certifications required when you're working in healthcare. The textile manufacturing industry's focus on fashion, you know, and lack of familiarity with the rigor required for healthcare, you know, has sort of made it thus, you know. Clients, you know, don't necessarily want the additional hurdle and investment of getting a particular material certified for use. So the more the textile industry awakens to the, you know, present and the opportunity in front of them and considers the challenge of, you know, certification downstream and what can be done early in the creation of the yarn, you know, would be better. That would be amazing because, you know, home healthcare products should look and feel like they belong in your world, not like an alien medical product invading your home. And, you know, textile manufacturers have a huge part to play in that.
Well, it's funny you say that, actually. I was talking to someone months ago now, I think from a FOA over in the US, and I think they were trying to get like a computer chip inside a yarn, and I just thought, I mean, he showed me sort of the theory of it and that, but I just thought, imagine if they could scale that up. That's really changing the game. So, well, you never know. In a couple of years, we might get there. But Milad, what do you think? I mean, again, you're working with underwear and stuff, so again, you sort of want to you don't want those hard wires either, really.
That's correct. Well, what we have developed at my end so far and that's the beauty of, I suppose, our system. Not to pat ourselves too much on the back, but we have no wires. Everything is yarns, and it feels and looks like an everyday garment you're wearing. The only added, I suppose, burden or extra step is just taking a electronics pod and inserting it into your underwear. That would be the only piece that I would kind of say is an addition. But as you mentioned, in a FOA, if they're working on a chip, that's nice. It's very futuristic, and it's a one-off, which is great for academia. But when you go into industry, the applicability of it is limited. So we need to take our baby steps to get there. But what we're looking at doing is even eliminating the need for insertion of a pod every time that you wear the underwear. And that we're planning on in the future generations, embedding that in the garment fully. And you basically just wear your underwear and you go about your life. So again, it's very important for the garments to look and feel like a garment, not to have wires and any restrictions. In parallel to that, the garment has to be robust, something that you wear it every day like any other garment and you treat it. Obviously, if you rip it, it's broken, so you shouldn't expect the functionality to be there, but to have that level of rigor. And if we are going for healthcare indications, as was pointed out, to ensure that the materials that have to go through a higher rigor can satisfy the healthcare regulatory while still being a general public garment and maintaining the same cost range. So it is a bit of a balancing act. But all of this, again, comes down to one thing, which is, do you have the functionality and the possibility to achieve proper functionality? All those things come as the form and the business, the pricing. So to that point, we are right now working on developing custom materials and yarns for our applications, and because that is the true purpose of it. We call it textile computing because we see the textile substrate as a textile PCB, and we can embed sensors within the textile structure, or we can integrate sensors on one way or another. And to that point, we don't want to have bulky mechanical pieces either weighing down the garment or making it seem a little bit obtrusive. Obviously, it's futuristic, so you're going to have an additional piece on the garment, but that's where we're working. And it is a multidisciplinary effort. You need textile expertise, you need industrial design and user experience expertise, you need mechanical engineering, you need electronics to miniaturize, and definitely the signal processing to analyze that data that's coming in, which is not your clean, beautiful, let's say gel electrode or IMU at 1,000 hertz attached to the piece of body. It's a bit overkill with the IMU, but that's kind of where you're trying to mediate that and to ensure that this thing is working well. Perfect. If it works well and can be correlated to the gold standard as much as possible, as close as possible, and that's where you're working on improving and optimizing and evolving the system over time, then you have a solution. And at that point, you're not worried about it working or passing any of the regulatory hurdles.
I just want to go back to that point, actually. I think you mentioned about price there. Is that quite a big barrier when it comes to smart textiles? I mean, when it comes to healthcare, I imagine people are more likely to spend extra on sort of products that can really help them. But I mean, is that a barrier? Are people quite concerned about maybe how expensive these products could be?
So to be honest, price is always, in my opinion, the number one factor in any purchase. Brand is very important, history and all those things. But ultimately, in this day and age, in the technology era, price is dominant. When we compare what we're offering, I can only speak on our behalf. I've seen other products on the market and the prices are really, really high. We're talking about 500 plus and some in the thousands of dollars for a simple garment that, if you say this garment detects and monitors healthcare and can be used for medical diagnoses, sure, it could justify the cost, but that's not the point. The point is the main system that can be mass producible in scale and at cost, so it can be used by everyone. You don't want a certain niche of the population that has that disposable income only be able to afford it. Fortunately, when you look at some of the statistics, I'm just going to refer to COVID, majority of the people that are suffering the most and having rates of either contamination, exposure, and death rate are in a lower echelon of the income kind of bracket, and they're the ones in need. It's not saying the individual that I can afford a very fancy car and a fancy house shouldn't be able to buy, but we should be able to satisfy not only the top tier but also the general public that really need this. So the cost of this would be within the same margins of a Apple Watch or a Fitbit. So it's in that same price range. So when the individual wants to make that decision of should I go with this device or this device, and they look at the features one versus the other, it should be a no-brainer, and that goes beyond the added value that comes with it. So personally, we are trying our best at Maya to make sure that this is a cost-effective solution. And at that point, it's an open market, so the market will decide. But we're doing our part to ensure that that price consideration is on a level playing field.
I mean, Terence, do you have anything to sort of add to that?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, historically, a lot of healthcare solutions, be their products or services, have been extremely high, and it depends on, various reimbursement models. But I think as the, more healthcare moves into the hands of the end user, as end users become more empowered and demand more ownership of it, and they perhaps see the value themselves, I think maybe, the cost of that may transition. There's a lot of very new and innovative companies moving into healthcare now and looking to almost consumerize healthcare. And they see the price points that people are willing to pay, and they realize that people aren't willing to engage with the sort of sums that traditionally have been linked to different services. And I think they're aware of that, and they're targeting that, and they're working towards that where they can, just like the guys, just like Milad has said, really.
Okay. Right. Well, now I'd quite like to ask each of you about sort of the next steps when it comes to further research and development within your company. So, I mean, Terence, I'll stick with you. I mean, what further inroads does Design Partners plan on making in the medical devices field?
Well, I think over the last, say, 12, 24 months, we've made a fairly significant investment in outfitting ourselves, shall I say, and ensuring that we can do as much internal prototyping development as possible ourselves, as much R&D ourselves. We've invested quite heavily in the textile space and sourcing the appropriate machinery and, ensuring that the right skill sets exist within the company. So we already have, a broad range of people, mechanical engineering, various types of designers, industrial, UX, UI, different people in the electronic space. But now we're bringing in a lot more in terms of fabrics, in terms of seamstress, people with fashion backgrounds. And then we also have a lot of the more harder skill sets, shall we say, like, so people who have more experience with CNCs and milling machines and all those sort of skill sets. So we have a very broad spectrum of capabilities and people within the company, and really that has been the biggest investment, is ensuring that everything exists in under one roof, shall we say, so that we can control our future.
No, it's very cool. It's so, like, there's just so many skills that you can't even fathom it, really, about the amount of people you might need until you get going.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's, you can't always put a title on those people either, because so many of these people come with a really broad, diverse range of skill sets.
I mean, I don't envy them. I imagine going on Indeed looking for a job, and it's what do you type into the box if in these cases? But there we are. Milad as well. I mean, I read that Mayan has recently set up a dedicated laboratory in Toronto to develop next generation connected performance solutions. Do you mind just telling me a bit about that and sort of where you're hoping to go in the future?
For sure. So that we start developing that lab as part of this expansion of the opportunities and the possibilities that we can realize with our smart textiles and individuals needing to have, they're working out at home, being able to create an environment where they can still connect with their trainers, compete with their friends, monitor themselves, and ensure that they don't come out of the COVID, in a worse health condition than they were, because obviously you're limited, you're not having. So that was one of the key areas, and we wanted to make the connection between individuals at home and key trainers, key athletes, not only for the athletic world, but also for the general public. So how we can bridge that gap in understanding what is sports performance, nutrition, and the whole package I was mentioning, holistic, the psychology and the physiology coming together. So that was one of our big developments, and we started off that lab. Another key development that we did ever since COVID began was development of smart masks. And first we started doing regular masks, face masks, washable face masks, and we've been distributing those, and we're in the path and the process of turning that into a surgical mask with ASTM F2100 standard, and then moving into NEOSH respirators, and as well finally going to a smart mask, a connected mask, a bit more futuristic, with the ability to detect and monitor an individual, whether it's a healthcare worker or someone working in a public setting, to have a better understanding of what's going on and send that information to, let's say, their boss or their foreman, monitoring a bunch of individuals. So that is kind of a development that we're going through, and hopefully in the next couple of months you should be hearing some, hopefully some positive news from that too.
Well, that's very cool. I mean, I was actually listening to the radio this afternoon, and they were saying in the UK there's a difficulty with people. Well, you either might be asymptomatic, or there's some people who do test positive, but they just can't afford to take a day off work, so they've sort of been pretending that they haven't got any symptoms. So a smart mask, I mean, that sort of, well, there's nowhere to hide, I imagine, if you're wearing one of those. So that's very, very interesting. I'll keep an eye out for that. Now, just as some final thoughts then, where do each of you see smart textiles for health and well-being applications sort of heading in the next few years? I mean, what do you think we'll be able to achieve with a little more time and experimentation that we perhaps just don't have at the moment?
I guess we're all looking for a level of convergence, and I think we've discussed today that we still exist in a world where you have different hard media coming together. You still may have plastics and things like that, and we're looking to see some sort of dissolution of some of these tech and capability within the textiles completely, so that we move closer towards that idea of the intimate garment that we discussed earlier, where if you're buying an undergarment that monitors you in a certain way, you're not really buying a piece of tech. That shouldn't be the ambition. The ambition should be to buy something that you're going to wear intimately. It's going to be on your skin. It should say way more to you, or way more about you, than I'm monitoring myself for X. It should represent your personality, just like any other piece of clothing you would choose. So it's that dissipation or the dissolution of the tech completely into your world, I think, is really where we're looking to go.
Okay. Milad, what are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, do you mind repeating the question?
So, well, I was just asking, sort of, with a bit more time and maybe experimentation, I mean, where do you think sort of smart textiles could head in future?
Oh, yeah, I think with time and more effort and money in the smart textile world, it'll become an everyday product. I think it will be part of the greater IoT, Society 5.0 connected IoT environment, where every system in the world is connected, from your car to your home to buildings. The individual, the human, will be connected and connected to that system, and that's where smart textiles, I believe, will be going. A kind of sense of singularity, for lack of a better term, and that can be bridged with textiles. Don't envision many people would be open to embedding stuff inside their body in an invasive fashion. I don't think we're there yet. I think smart textiles would be the midterm, but even despite that possibility, even currently being available, some of the work that what the Elon Musk company Neuralink, I think, is doing, that's what the name is. For some scenarios of individuals with severe disabilities, that would be, not severe, but just the disabilities would be valuable. But the smart textile could be a medium ground that can capture general public and be ubiquitous. And I think that's where we're headed towards.
Okay. Well, I mean, guys, there's probably a million other questions I could ask you on this, because it's such a interesting sort of emerging field. But I mean, thank you very much for joining me today, and I wish you every success with your future projects as well.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Terence. Everyone.